Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. Today's tutorial is an upgrade to a pattern we've already done once before. If you recall, we've already done the Sunshine Wristlet tutorial by Bagstock Designs. Well, she actually zhuzhed up that bag just a bit more to make it a crossbody with a boxed bottom. Oh my gosh, and yeah, it's still free. It's still a free pattern, but it's a full-on bag. So I actually made two different versions of this, and we're going to kind of talk about pros and cons of each one. So the first one is just like this. I know, this is just like the most fun print, isn't it? But you can see it has the classic Sunshine Wristlet design with the two panels, but this time we have a zipper on the front, and we have a crossbody strap that goes just like that. The back looks just like the back on the wristlet, but now we also have a nice boxed bottom so you can set your bag down on a surface and it will stay upright. Here we have this zipper on top, and inside we have an interior zipper in the lining, and that's it. So this is a really, really fun take on the wristlet and a much more useful way to use that design of a bag. In this bag, I did use foam as she suggests in the pattern, and the one thing I notice about using foam is that when you open it up, you kind of have like this thickness on the inside on the lining, and that's just because the foam is thick, right? Foam can also be a little bit difficult for some machines because it does add layers, and if you're using a vinyl, you know, it can kind of be a little bit much for more domestic machines. So I want to show you another version I did. In this one, I actually did not use the foam. Instead, I used Decovil Light, and you can see we don't have that kind of bulky seam right here around the zipper. It still provides firmness, structure. You can see I can put both of them up just like that. I will say that this one kind of has a feel that's a little bit more handmade, and this one definitely has a feel that this is store-bought. So I'm really new to Decovil Light, but I've been playing around with it and using it in place of foam or fusible fleece in a lot of these patterns, and it has been really fun to work with. So for today's tutorial, we're actually going to use Decovil Light instead of the foam. Now, another thing I want to note about this pattern, if you're using very thick vinyl, like for example, this is a very thick vinyl, you might have an issue where the seams kind of spread open a little bit and you can see the stitching. We're going to discuss how to prevent that from happening while we're sewing. So if you're having that problem with your bag, we're going to go over how to make sure that's not a problem. You can see on this one, I used that same thick vinyl for my strap. And to be honest, this was more than my machine could handle. It could not handle this very thick vinyl. You can see some of the stitches are coming out. It's too much. It's too thick for my slider. So for the other bag, instead of using vinyl for the strap, which I'm a huge fan of using vinyl for straps because it is very professional, but if my machine can't sew it, then it doesn't really work out for me. So instead of using vinyl for the strap, I actually used cotton for this strap, but I interfaced the cotton with Decovil Light. So it has, you can see it's very firm. It's not loosey-goosey. It has a feel of vinyl, but a very thin vinyl, and it looks great on my hardware. And it's just much, much easier for my machine to work with. So we're also going to do that. We're going to use Decovil Light on our strap. We're going to be using a cotton woven strap, and we're going to be using Decovil Light in the bag in place of the foam. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider clicking subscribe down below. Any questions or comments or shout outs, please leave them in the comment section down below. Don't forget that the very first comment in the comment section will be by me, and it will have a timestamp for every single step of this bag. If there's just one part you're interested in, you're going to click on that timestamp and it's going to take you straight there in the video. You don't have to scroll, just click it. It takes you right there. As always, I will have a link for the pattern in the description below. Links for everything I'm using will also be in the description. Some of the fabric I use is a little bit hard to find, but I will tell you where to find that all in the description below this video. This pattern is a free pattern. This is a really, really generous free pattern because this is a useful bag with a lot of details in it. So if you're not already a member of the Bagstock Designs Facebook group, I suggest you go and join their group. Give them a shout out. Tell them thank you for such an awesome free pattern because it is really, really a beautiful bag. And if you've been around here for a while, you know that the wristlet version of this is one of my all-time favorite bags to make. So of course I got very excited about this bag. All right, let's get started. So the material for this bag requires a fat quarter of exterior fabric. This can be quilt cotton. A fat quarter of contrasting fabric. This is going to be the sides of your bag. I like to use a vinyl for this. And then a half a yard of quilt weight lining fabric. If you're making a strap for your bag, you're going to want to make sure that whichever material you use, you have nice long strips of it. So if you're going to use vinyl, make sure you have one nice long strip of vinyl. If you're going to be using quilt cotton for your strap, you're going to need a couple of strips that are about 24 inches or longer. So just make sure you have longer strips for your strap. For my interfacing, I'll be using this cotton woven Pellon SF101. This will be applied to pretty much every piece of quilt cotton except for a couple, and I will mention that in the next step. For the structure of the bag, instead of using the sew-in foam interfacing, I'm going to be using these Pellon Decoville Light 525. You're going to need 3 zippers for this bag. You'll need an 11-inch or longer zipper for the very top of the bag, an 8-inch or longer zipper for the front zipper pocket, and a 7-inch or longer zipper for the inside of the bag. I'm not that picky about my zippers and what sizes they are. I will mention that the zipper on the very front of the bag is the most noticeable, so if you have a fun zipper or zipper pull you really want to use, I suggest putting it on that part of the bag instead of the top. The gray zipper tape is from Sally Tomato, as is this zipper pull. The little Mickey zipper pull is from Wizard Stitchery, and the bottom zipper is from Zip It on Etsy. I will have links for all of these in the description below. Next up is your bag hardware. You only need this if you're going to be making the crossbody version. You're going to need 2 3/4-inch swivel hooks, 1 3/4-inch slider, and 2 3/4-inch D-rings. All of my hardware today is from moremeknow.com, and I'll have a link for her site down in the description below. So when you print out your pattern, you'll notice that there's another sheet that has these cutting labels. This is really handy because this is all of the pieces to make the bag. You can just cut out this grid and then clip it to your pieces as you cut them out. This just helps avoid confusion between pieces. So from the contrasting fabric, you're going to cut out these exterior side panels A and B. You need 2 of each. If you're using cotton for these, you're going to want to make sure you interface them with woven interfacing. From the exterior fabric, we're going to need the exterior back center panel, the exterior front center top panel, and the exterior front center bottom panel. You can see for these front center panels, in between is going to be your zipper pocket. All of these pieces need to be interfaced with woven interfacing. This bag has 2 pockets, so from your lining, you're going to need to cut 2 pieces of your interior zipper pocket panels. These will both need to be interfaced with woven interfacing, and then you'll have 1 cut from your exterior front zipper pocket panel, and this will also need to be interfaced with woven interfacing. Also from your lining, you're going to need 2 lining panel cuts. These will both need to be interfaced with woven interfacing. You can use that same template to cut your Decoville Light or your foam. She does offer a second template to make the foam cut at a smaller side if you want to keep it out of your seams. If you decide to go that route, you will need a way to fuse your foam to the bag when you're working on it, since it won't be stitched in place. In addition to those cuts, you're going to need to cut 2 strap connectors if you're using the adjustable crossbody strap, and 1 zipper tab. These strap connectors will both need to be interfaced with woven interfacing, but the zipper tab does not need the interfacing. I'm going to be using quilt cotton today for my strap, so here are my 2 cuts. I'm not going to interface these with woven interfacing. Instead, I will be interfacing this strap with Decoville Light, and the size for this is the same as the size for the vinyl strap in the pattern. So let's first build the exterior back panel. So there are a few different ways to try to get these angles to match up before you sew them together. In the pattern, she suggests marking the midpoints of all the pattern pieces and then line them up that way and sew them together. There's another fantastic tutorial out there for this bag, and I will have her video linked down below, and she provides you with instructions on how to mark the different panels by 3/8 of an inch and line them up. I'm taking a variation of that, but instead I'm just going to mark 3/8 of an inch in on my exterior back center panel from one corner, and then I'm going to flip my exterior side panel A right side together with my back panel and line up the edge, and then just make sure the very edge of my side panel touches that marked line. And that's how I know how high to take it. So I don't want it to go up higher and cover it. I don't want it to go down too low and have it exposed. I just want to line it up so that the top edge of my side panel runs right against that mark on the top edge of my exterior back center panel. And you can go ahead and clip these panels together. I'm going to repeat this method on the other side before I go to the sewing machine. So I'm going to take this small ruler and I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch from this top corner onto the top of my center panel. 1, 2, 3, just like that. Make a little mark just in the seam, and then flip my side panel right side down and line it up so that the top edge just touches that mark, and that's as far as I need to go. And then just clip the whole thing together. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both of these edges at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So you should now have your side panels stitched down. You can go ahead and press them open. If you're using cotton woven for your side panels, you can use an iron and press this. Since I'm using vinyl, I'm going to have to just press with my fingers. Now, when you press this, you want to make sure your seam is pressed behind the side panel. If you're working with vinyl, I know that's just not the direction it wants to go in. You can press it behind the cotton, which would be a little bit easier. However, on the other side, it will be pressed behind the side panels and the top stitching will be done on the side panels. So for example, on this bag, I pressed the seams behind the middle point and you can see the vinyl is kind of tucked in under, and then I top stitch on the middle panel and it looks just fine. However, if you look at the bottom, you can see that the front panel is a little different. On the front panel, the seam really has to go behind the vinyl, so it doesn't quite match up on the bottom. Now, this is not something I think anybody would notice when wearing it or seeing it. However, if you are kind of a perfectionist, you're gonna wanna make sure you pick which way you're gonna go and you're gonna stick with it. I'm just telling you, when you do the front, it's gonna be very difficult for you to have the seam pressed behind the center panel. So I suggest pressing all of your seams behind the side panels. So we're going to press the seam behind the side panels and we're going to do a top stitch at 1/8 of an inch on the side panel all the way down both sides. All right, there you go. Now, if you have any little extras on the bottom, you can go ahead and trim those off. All right, you can go ahead and put this to the side for now. Now we're gonna work on the front panel. So if you're using zipper tape like I am, go ahead and add your zipper pull. Once you have your zipper ready, go ahead and just stitch over the ends a couple times just to make sure that your zipper doesn't fly off in either direction. Now we need to mark the midpoints of all of these pieces. Here I have the top and the bottom of the back center panels, my zipper, and my exterior front zipper pocket lining panel. So I'm just gonna fold each of them in half from side to side and mark the midpoint. The same on the bottom. Do the same with your zipper. Then also do the same with your pocket panel. Once you have the midpoints marked on all of your panel pieces, we're going to start with the back center panel and the zipper. When you pin this together, make sure that your zipper pull is on the left when it's closed. So when I open it, it'll move to the right. When it's closed, it'll move to the left. So make sure it is closed on the left and then lay it right side down against the bottom back center panel, matching up your midpoint lines and clip together. All right, now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew these together at either a 3/8 or a 1/4 inch seam allowance, depending on your zipper. My suggestion is just using a zipper foot. However close you can get to your zipper is going to be your seam allowance. All right, once you have your zipper attached, go ahead and grab your pocket panel and lay that right side down against the right side of your exterior panel and line it up with the midpoint mark on your zipper and bottom exterior center panel and clip in place. Go ahead and clip along the entire edge Just like that. Now you can go ahead and flip over the entire unit. And we're just going to re-sew over this stitch line with the back center panel wrong side up. So once you have these sewn together, we can go ahead and press it open wrong sides together. I'm going to be trying out this new pressing mat today. I got this off of Amazon. It is a little bit thinner than my normal pressing mat, but it is a really good size. It's 17 inches by 13.5 inches, and it comes with this mat, which is helpful for me because my new iron actually can't stand up on its edge. So this will be helpful for me whenever I'm pressing at my workstation. This is my new iron. It's another cordless Panasonic. I really like it because it heats up really quickly. I don't use water in the reservoir just because I've dealt with a lot of staining from that. The only thing is it doesn't have a flat edge, so you can't leave it up like this. You have to keep it down all the time. So to press these open, I first like to press along this top edge just like that, and then pull up that back panel and finger press the back panel, and then press on the back panel side right along that zipper. I'll then turn the whole unit so that the lining and the back panel are wrong sides together. You can do this on either side. And then just press along that seam. Now we're going to take this back to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch along this top edge right against the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have a top stitch, flip it so that you have the lining right side up, and take the bottom unsewn edge of your lining panel and lay it on the top of your zipper panel. Make sure that the sides of your lining are matching up with the sides of the other half of the lining, and then just clip it to the top of your zipper panel. If you want to make sure your midpoint on your lining panel should match up with the midpoint on your zipper. Okay, now we're just going to sew this bottom of the lining panel to this top edge of the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. We're just kind of basting it in place right now. Once you have that lining panel basted to your zipper, go ahead and flip it so that it is exterior side up. Grab your top exterior panel and lay it right side down against your zipper, lining up the midpoints, and then just clip those together. So now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew this top panel onto the zipper at either a 3/8 or 1/4 inch seam allowance, depending on how wide your zipper tape is. Now we just have to press this top panel open. So I press it once, push it up, and press it again. All right, now we're going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to top stitch along this bottom edge of the top panel right next to the zipper at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Your lining panel will be down this whole time. Don't flip your lining panel up. It's going to be down just like that. So the top looks like this, and the back will look like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to baste along the sides of our center panel. In order to do this, push down that lining really well. You can press it with an iron if you want to, but it's not necessary. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew along the edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from above the zipper all the way down until it crosses over your lining pocket. You're going to do this on both sides. Make sure your zipper pull is in between these stitches before you sew this down. Once you have it basted in place, you can go ahead and cut off any excess outside of your exterior panel. So just cut along the edge. I'm not cutting my exterior fabric, I'm just cutting the lining and the zipper. All right, so this should be what you're left with. You can go ahead and grab your exterior back center panel pattern and line that up with your zipper top bottom unit you just made, and make sure it's the same size. If it's just a hair off, I don't worry about it. All right, and now we're going to build this the same way we built the back panel. So grab your sides A and B side panels, And once again, grab a small ruler and make a small mark on the very top at 3/8 of an inch in. Now grab one of your side panels and lay it right side down and line it up so that the very top edge just kisses that mark on the top edge of your center panel and pin in place. Do the same with the other side, just right sides together. Okay, now you can take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both edges at 3/8 inch seam allowance. I do find that the vinyl likes to shift a bit when I'm sewing it onto cotton. So to assist with that, I use a walking foot. That just makes sure that all of my layers, my vinyl, my cotton, my interfacing, everything stays together exactly like I have it clipped. I won't have to worry about the vinyl kind of getting pushed down as I'm sewing. So this should be your panel. Go ahead and push your side panels open. If you recall, when we were building the back panel, I mentioned that it would be very difficult for you to push this seam against the pocket, and that's because of that zipper really. So you're going to push your side panels with the seam staying behind the side panels. If you're using cotton here, you can go ahead and press this with an iron. Since I'm using vinyl, I'm just going to kind of give it a finger press, but mostly I'm just going to hold it down when I'm at the sewing machine. We're going to top stitch along both of these edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have your front panel done, go ahead and grab your back panel as well. And now we're going to apply interfacing to this. If you're using foam, you're going to go ahead and just apply your foam to the back, top stitch around the entire piece. If you're using a piece of foam that is smaller than your exterior pieces, which the pattern does give you a template for, you're going to want to fuse that on in one way or another. You can do that by using a 505 spray adhesive. She also suggests heat and bond. There's a bunch of different options. I, however, am going to be using this Decovil Light. So to apply the Decovil Light, I'm first going to take my outer panel and lay it right side down. I'm then going to take my cutout Decovil, and there's like a shiny side, that's your glue side. I'm going to lay that shiny side on top of the back of my outer panel. Now I'm just going to use my iron and press it onto the back. I find that the glue melts pretty quickly. You don't have to hold it down for a really long time like you do with SF 101. So it goes on really well. You don't have any problem with the fabric warping or wrinkling up like you do with fusible fleece. The only downside I've noticed with Decovil Light is that after you get done turning your bag, it does wrinkle up quite a bit and I have to press it again, but you should really press your bag after turning anyways. All right, now that just makes my panel nice and firm, and it does feel like a thin vinyl. I really like the feel of this. We're gonna go ahead and do the same with the other panel with the pocket. So lay that right side down, lay shiny side on the wrong side of your panel, and just fuse it on. All right, now your exterior panels are all ready to go. If you're making the crossbody version, go ahead and grab your strap connectors, and we're going to draw a midpoint line going across the longest edge of your connector. All you have to do is fold the long raw edge up to meet that midpoint line and press. You're going to do the same for both of these, and then do the opposite long edge as well, so that both raw edges are meeting in the middle. Now we're going to take both of these to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew along both of these folded edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now grab both of your D-rings, and you're going to thread your strap connector so that the folded inside, the raw sides, are against the flat part of your D-ring and then just pinch together. So we're pretty much hiding those raw edges. I like to use a clip to just hold it all together like that. Do the same with the other strap connector and D-ring. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and just sew right up against your D-ring on your strap connectors. To help get nice and close to those D-rings, I like to use my zipper foot. It's not necessary though. So I've found that these strap connectors stick out just a little bit farther than I really want them to. So I do suggest trimming them down about 1/8 or 1/4 inch just from the raw edge after you have it attached to the D-ring, just to allow this to sit in a little bit tighter to the bag. I do worry that with it being so long like this, it will rip a little bit more easily. So now you get to decide if you're going to attach your D-rings to the sides of the bag or to the top. I've already made a couple bags with it attached to the side, so for today I'm going to attach them to the top of the bag. I've seen a few people mention that it's best to attach these to the back panel rather than one on the back and one on the front, just because it holds the bag better. So I'm going to take that advice today and I'm going to attach both of my D-rings to the back panel. So following the instructions, I'm going to mark a line and I'm just going to pin these both to the back panel, just like that. We'll see how this turns out. Now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and I'm just going to base this in place using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Your panel should now look like this unless you're doing the side tabs. You can go ahead and put this to the side. Now let's work on the zipper panel for the inside of the bag. Go ahead and turn your lining panel right side down. You can use the template or you can fold your lining panel in half, side to side, to find the midpoint, and then just mark the midpoint for the top of the lining panel. Grab your ruler and draw a line that is 2 inches down from the top. Just like that. Now we're going to draw another line that is 3/8 inch down from our previously drawn line. So lining up our 3/8 inch mark on that line, draw a second line. Now line up the 3.5 inch mark on that midpoint of your lining panel, making sure that you have it level, just like that. And then connect these two horizontal lines, just like that. So now you can just measure 7 inches from that line over to the left. And now you should have a rectangle that is 7 inches long by 3/8 of an inch high. We want to draw a center line on there. I'm just going to kind of line up that bottom line between my 1/8 and 2/8 inch. And then draw a center line. Now you can go ahead and just draw a V, just like that, connecting the corners to that midpoint line. Now go ahead and flip your lining panel so that it is right side up. And the pattern suggests going down 1 inch. Find the midpoint of my interior zipper pocket panel. Line that up with the midpoint of your lining panel and just set it up against the ruler just like that. So this should be centered and it should be laying 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch down from the top edge of your lining panel. I like to use pins to just hold it all together so it doesn't move around while I'm sewing. Now you can flip this so that it's lining wrong side up again. We're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along the exterior of our rectangle. It's going to be sewn through the lining and the pocket panels. Go ahead and remove your pins. And now we're just going to cut along this midpoint line and up along those V's. You can use a seam ripper to help you get started. You're going to be cutting through the lining panel and your pocket panel. The closer you can get to these corner stitches, the flatter it's going to lie when you push this pocket through. So getting close to those stitches without cutting them is difficult, but it's going to make your bag look nicer. Okay, once you have your slit cut open, you're going to go ahead and push that pocket panel through the opening. all of the sides of it, just like that. Now grab your iron and just press along that folded edge to get everything nice and flat. Go ahead and press the front as well. And you can see even my corners have a little bit of puckering. I don't worry about that so much, especially for lining panels. If I wanted to correct that, I would go back and I would just cut a little bit closer to those corners. But for me, this is fine. So now take your interior pocket panel zipper and we're going to apply this to this opening. To make it a little bit easier, I'm going to use this Dritz wash away tape, and this is just a double-sided tape. I'm going to lay it right along the edge of both sides of my zipper. Now take your lining panel with the pocket hole that we just made and lay it over your zipper until you get it centered in the way you like it, and then just push down along those edges. You can always lift it back up, move things around if you need to. All right, once you're happy with it, make sure you take your zipper pull and pull your zipper into this opening. Now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna sew along this box on the lining fabric at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you have your zipper installed, go ahead and take your lining panel right side down. You can trim your zipper if you used a longer zipper like I did. Now grab your other lining pocket panel and lay it right side down along the same pocket panel you just sewed on with the zipper. Now we're going to clip along the 2 vertical edges and the top horizontal edge. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along these 3 clipped edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance. And at the machine, I'm going to show you a trick I learned while watching Lauren Mormino on how to prep this opening for closure later. Okay, first, when sewing this pocket, I like to sew with the lining panel up so that I don't accidentally sew through the lining panel. So I'll do lining panel right side up and then fold it out of the way. On the first edge, just fold it back about 1/4 inch, maybe 3/8 of an inch, just like this. All right, and we're gonna start sewing with that fold, just like that. Make sure you backstitch. Now we're gonna sew along all 3 edges at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once we get to the opposite edge of this panel with the fold, we're going to fold it again, and I'll show you once we get there. All right, once you're almost done with that 3rd edge, you're gonna fold up that bottom in the same direction as you did on the other side. So on this side, we folded it up on the side we're working on, so we're gonna do the same thing. We're not gonna fold it the opposite way, we're gonna fold it the same way, the same amount, about 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, just like that. And we're gonna sew over it folded. And make sure you backstitch. All right, you can go ahead and set this lining panel to the side. Now we're gonna sew on our top zipper. If you're using zipper tape like I am, go ahead and add on your zipper pull. I find the zipper tape from Sally Tomato works really well at easily putting on zipper pulls. All right, now take your open end, which means it'll be open like that, and mark 1 inch down from each end on the outside edges. So this is, don't mark it closer to the zipper, mark it on the outside edge, just like that. So you're just gonna pinch along that 1 inch mark on the fabric side and then fold up the zipper just like that. So what you should have is this great little 90-degree fold, and your zipper is turning 90 degrees. Go ahead and clip that together to hold in place. Do the same on the other side. We pinch on our 1 inch mark, and then we fold the zipper up 90 degrees, just like that, and then adjust as necessary. This is a much easier way to do this kind of runoff zipper. All right, now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're just gonna sew along this little corner to hold it all in place. If you have a pair of scissors, anything that's small and pointy really, that will help right here, just kind of holding it in place while you're sewing. Once the needle gets it, it's much easier. See, it kind of comes undone. So I'm gonna hold it together just like that. There we go. Once you have your ends taken care of, we're going to trim down our zipper so that it is exactly 10 inches and 1/4. So it's going to be 10 1/4 inches from the fold. So line up your ruler and mark at 10 1/4 inches, just like that. Take your scissors and just trim off any excess. Now grab your zipper tab and mark a midpoint line along the center of the tab, just like that. Now fold up one of your raw edges to meet that midpoint line and use your iron to just press it down. Take your other raw edge and line that up to also meet that middle and press. And then you can take the entire unit and fold along that middle line and press that as well. And now you have your zipper tab. Grab your zipper and we're going to apply the zipper tab to the end, the raw end of our zipper tape. And you can use a couple clips to just hold it in place for now. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along the folded edge that's inside on the zipper. All right, now you can trim the sides of your zipper tab so that it's the same width as your zipper tape. And now your zipper is all ready to go. Grab your exterior panel that has the zipper on the front and take your zipper and lay this right side down with the zipper pull on the left. So the zipper pulls when closed should be on the same side, right side down. So when centering your zipper on the top of the exterior panel, you want about 1/2 of an inch on each side. So I just use the grid on my cutting mat to help me determine where that is. Now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew the zipper on at a 3/8 to 1/4 inch seam allowance, whichever one gets you closest to the zipper. Now grab your lining panel that does not have the zipper pocket and lay it right side down against your exterior panel with the zipper in between both. Clip these together, lining up the top edges. Now flip over your unit and you're just going to go over your previous stitches at the sewing machine, this time including the lining panel. All right, once you have it all stitched together, you can turn them so that they are wrong sides together, right sides out. If you're using woven fabric for your side panels, you can go ahead and press along the zipper. I'm just going to clip along it to help space out my fabric from the zipper before top stitching. Now we're going to go back to the machine and we're going to top stitch along this edge at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, now we're going to go through that same process to attach the other panels. So grab your back panel and lay the zipper right side down. Again, we want the zipper to be in about 1/2 of an inch on either side of the exterior panel. All right, so we're going to sew along the zipper at 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch, whichever one gets you closer to the zipper. All right, so you should have the zipper attached to the other exterior panel. Grab your lining panel that has the pocket and lay that right side down. So it's going to be right side lining panels together, but you're going to line it up with the top edge of your exterior panel and clip this together. All right, now flip this so that you have the back of the exterior panel up, and you're just going to go over your previous stitches that you made for attaching your zipper. When you're sewing, make sure your D-ring is pointed down and away from your seam. You don't want it accidentally pointed up towards your seam. so you can go ahead and trim down your zipper if you have any sticking out like I do. And now we're going to take our lining panel and fold it back so that it is wrong sides together against that exterior panel. I like to clip the bottom edges together. It helps me to get the seam around the zipper flat a little bit easier. So now we're just gonna push this down just like that. And if you're using cotton woven, you can use an iron to press this down. All right, so now we're gonna top stitch along this remaining edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, your bag when unfolded should look something like this now. Now the first thing you want to do is unzip both of your exterior zippers, just like this. Okay, take your exterior panels only and fold those right sides together, and also fold your lining panels right sides together. So now your bag should look something like this. We're going to start with the exterior. Line up the bottom edges so that the contrast edges kind of match up, and clip along that bottom edge. Now go ahead and clip along the sides. For these seams right here between the exterior and the lining, you're going to want to fold them so that the raw edges of the seam are pointing towards the exterior side. It's kind of the natural way they want to go, especially if you're using vinyl. But that will just help it all lay nice and smooth in the end. Okay. Do the other side as well. Now, I'm going to hold off on doing the lining panel until I get this sewn together. Now for the exterior side, I'm going to sew along all 3 of my pinned edges at 3/8 inch seam allowance. We are not going to sew along the boxed corners. You're just going to sew up to them. Make sure you backstitch well, especially around these corners, because we're going to be tugging on that quite a bit once we box them. And we're not sewing over the lining, we're only going to sew up to it. I'm going to sew down this top part up here. This back stitch right there. Okay. I'm going to do the bottom panel at 3/8 of an inch. So on the side that has a zipper tab, you want to make sure you don't accidentally get the zipper tab in your stitches for the side. So just be aware of where that is. Once you have the exterior sewn together, let's work on the lining. So just like with the exterior, we're going to pin the lining right sides together, matching up all of our edges. So we're going to sew along the same edges, just the side edges and the bottom, leaving the box corners unsewn. But this time we're going to do it at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, except at the top where it meets the exterior. So right here by the zipper, we're going to start at a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to expand it to a 5/8 inch seam allowance towards the bottom of the sides. On the very bottom, we're going to use a 5/8 inch seam allowance. So I always like to start at the bottom and sew up to the zipper. I find it's much easier for my machine to handle. So I'm going to start at 5/8 inch seam allowance on the bottom, and then I'm going to decrease my seam allowance as I get closer to the top, and I'm going to bring it down to a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Again, make sure you don't get that zipper tab, but you shouldn't, because right now we're just going to bring up the stitches to meet the stitches from the exterior. Go nice and gentle, as this section can be kind of thick. There we go. And then back stitch once you meet the previous stitches from the exterior stitching. There you go. So you can see I started at 5/8 of an inch, I decreased it to 3/8 of an inch, so once I got to the very top, I can just meet up with my exterior stitches at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And do the same for the other side. All right, so you should have your exterior and your lining all sewn together like this. Before we box these corners, I want to talk about vinyl and these side seams. If you're using a really thick vinyl, it's very likely that once you turn your bag out, these side seams are going to pull and you're going to be able to see those stitches. What we're going to do is we're going to go back to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch from this previous row of stitches towards the seam, so outside of the bag. This will reduce the pressure on these seams and should prevent the seams from showing. So I'm going to go 1/8 of an inch to the right of the seam, and I'm only doing this on my exterior pieces. So let's box the exterior corners first. Grab your corner and just kind of pull at those cut edges. And we want these seams to lie flat. So I'm going to rotate my seams in opposite directions so that on the right side, they're just kind of snug, hugged up against one another. Clip these in place. And let's do the same for the other corner. Just pull the sides. All right, now we're going to take this to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along these raw edges at 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you're using a thicker vinyl, you can go ahead and double up these stitches just like we did on the sides by moving out 1/8 of an inch towards the seam and just doing another row of stitches. This will just help prevent the stitches from being seen on the exterior of the bag. All right, your exterior corners should be boxed. Now we're going to repeat that same process for the lining and hugging them and clipping them. This time we're going to sew these at 5/8 inch seam allowance. All right, all of your edges should now be sewn. The only opening left should be in that interior pocket that we did not open, did we? Gotta be kidding me, I forgot to open that pocket. So if you are like me and you forgot to keep that interior pocket open, what you can actually do is pinch your lining and feel for that zipper. And then with the lining, you can pull open your zipper. Just a heads up if you forgot to open that interior zipper, which you're gonna need to have open for turning. All is not lost. All right. Now we're going to trim down all of our seam allowances to 1/4 of an inch. All right, so now we can turn the pouch right side out through that pocket hole we left. And just be nice and gentle. I've had a few of you guys say you wanted to see me pushing out these bags to see how much I struggle. It usually takes me a little bit of time because I'm trying not to rip anything. But this one is actually not a hard one to birth. So put your hand inside that hole through the lining to push out the corners of your exterior. Especially if you're using vinyl, it can be a little tricky to get it all the way you want it. Make sure you push out those corners. And you should see with the box corners, because we did that double stitching, we don't have the stitches showing. Whereas on other bags I've done this, I did have the stitches showing right there. Push out the top. Yeah, so you can see on the sides here, we have this really nice, clean, no pulling. It looks really, really nice there. All right, so once you have everything pushed out, we're gonna give this a final press, but first let's close up our seams. So you'll notice when you push your pocket right side out, because we sewed down those edges, it all just kind of folds down real easily. So all you have to do is clip along this edge. Just give it a nice tug and it will just fold in on itself just like that. All right, now let's go top stitch along this edge at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, once you have this top stitch closed, go ahead and put that back in the pocket and then just push down your lining so it's not all bunched up. You can use steam with this. That'll probably smooth out the cotton a little bit quicker. If you have vinyl on the sides, you want to make sure you don't accidentally melt that. So be very gentle when you're smoothing out your bag. Make sure you don't burn yourself. But this is the one thing about the Decoville Light. It does kind of crinkle pretty well when it gets birthed. So the bag portion is done. Let's work on the strap. If you're using cotton like I am and you have 2 pieces, we're going to want to sew these together before we adhere our interfacing. So take the 2 short ends of your strap pieces and lay them right side together and perpendicular, just like this. If you have some sort of a directional print, you'll want to test this out because when you flip this up, you'll want the print to be up in the same sides. So we're going to just line these up corner to corner. I like to mark the bottom edge of the horizontal piece on the top fabric just so I have a nice clean spot to make my line. Now you're going to draw a diagonal line from the top left corner of your top fabric to that marked corner on the bottom right. Just like this. Go. Now I use a couple of pins to just hold my strips of fabric together. And now we're going to go to the sewing machine and just sew along this line. So once you have that sewn, you can trim this down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just getting rid of this bulky triangle right here. Now let's go ahead and press this seam open. First we're going to set it. And you can open it up and kind of finger press it open. Just like that. And then press there. Flip it wrong side up. And let's press open this seam allowance. Now we're going to adhere our Decoville Light to our strap. All you have to do is line up your Decoville Light over your strap and iron it on. I find that the glue on Decoville Light melts pretty quickly. Once you have your interface adhered to your strap, we're just going to go along and fold it long sides together in half, and then just finger press it. So now you can open it back up, and really we just want to eyeball where that fold is. Now we're going to fold each of the long edges up to meet that center fold. Use your iron to press this down so it stays in place. Just go all the way along your strap. All right, once you have one side down, go ahead and fold the other side down as well to meet. Just go along the entire strap. So once you have your long edges folded into the middle, just fold the entire thing in half. If it makes it easier, use clips here and there. The interfacing is pretty stiff, so it should hold its shape pretty well. But just to keep it together before we take it to the machine, you can clip it. All right, now we're going to take our strap to the sewing machine and we're going to sew along both edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So now take one of the ends of your strap, and I like to just kind of fold it down 1/2 of an inch and then 1 inch from that fold. So if you were to extend it, you would have 1/2 of an inch here and 1.5 inches here. Thread this over your slider and then back around. And we want that slider to nest in that 1.5 inch fold. Fold down your 1/2 of an inch fold just like that. And this just covers up the raw edges. Now we're going to go to the sewing machine and we're going to sew a line as close to the slider as we can get. And then we're going to sew a second line about 1/8 of an inch in from this fold just to secure this in place. When sewing along the slider, you want to make sure you're pulling the slider out of the way and you don't want your needle to hit it. Make sure you backstitch. And then we're also just going to sew right along that edge at about 1/2 of an inch seam allowance. This one's going to be kind of a bulky one, so be gentle with your machine. Okay, so now take your strap so that the folded edge is up. Grab one of your swivel hooks and thread it onto the end of your strap so that the swivel hook part is down. So just like that. Make sure your strap is nice and straight and take the raw edge, thread that over your slider, and it should be on the side where the fold is, up and then through the other side of the slider, just like that. So when you pull the slider and the swivel hook away from one another, the swivel hook should be pointing out, the slider on top, and then a raw edge over here. Let's close up this raw edge. You can fold in 1/2 of an inch from the edge and then fold in another 1 inch from that folded edge. So this would be at 1.5 inches from the edge. Just like this. It kind of naturally wants to fold into a sandwich like this. Thread your swivel hook on so that it's tucked into that fold at 1.5 inches. Fold down the 1/2 inch, fold it over, and you should have something just like this. All the raw edges should be tucked in and the swivel hook should be on the outside just like that. We're going to again do 2 stitches, 1 stitch right against the bar of the swivel hook and then another one 1/8 of an inch in from this fold. Do your best to keep it away from the metal. Make sure you backstitch well. These straps go through a lot, so. Okay, and then go ahead and do the folded side as well. This part is a little bit thicker than that one was. And there you go, your strap is done. All right, so this is so cute. Oh my goodness, you guys, look at this. I don't even mind. Like, you might notice that I use nickel hardware, but then rose gold accents. I do not even mind that one bit. It is so cute. And like I said, we use the Decoville Light this time so that we don't have a lot of bulk on the inside. It's very thin, very sleek. Here is our strap. This is a very sturdy strap thanks to the interfacing. I do feel like woven straps with this Decoville Light is going to be my new go-to straps. So let's just clip it onto the bag. Oh, I love bags, guys. I love bags. All right, so here is our bag. Let me see if I can put it on. That's a cute bag, right? Look at that. And you can see because we doubled up our stitches on the side, we don't have to worry about any of the stitches showing or anything like that. This is such a beautiful bag. So don't forget that this pattern is completely free. Go check out Bagstock Designs website. I will have a link for the pattern down in the description below. It's a really fun bag to make. It is a really polished, beautiful finish. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that this tutorial inspired you to go out and make this beautiful Sunshine crossbody bag. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or send me an email at jessica@OklaRoots.com. If you're not a subscriber, please consider clicking subscribe. I hope you have a great rest of the week. Get out there and make something. Bye!